Hello and welcome to Comic Drake, where I talk about comic books and my name is Drake. All things must die, and the fear of death has culminated in personifications of death, and they have existed throughout all of culture, from the Grim Reaper to Shinigami. So it only makes sense that comic books would have their own as well. But DC Comics doesn't have one Grim Reaper figure, in fact, they have several. So let's take a look at all of them. Okay, we're going to start this off with the biggest and most obvious place to start: death. Death is one of the endless, some of the most powerful beings in the DC multiverse that I have been dying to make a video about for ages. She isn't an aspect of death or anything like that, she straight up is death. She is the concept, the action. Personally, she is one of my favorite interpretations of the Grim Reaper in all of pop culture. Death is laid back and sassy with a delightful goth girl aesthetic. It's so much more interesting than just another skeleton guy in a robe. Her somewhat playful nature adds to the mystery of the character, like the Cheshire Cat. There's always something behind that cool demeanor, and she always seems like she just knows something that you don't. Like all of the Endless, Death has her own special rules and set of quirks. One of my favorites is that she takes on a mortal form for one day every 100 years, to better understand the life that she's taking away. And at the end of her time, Death is ultimately the one who reaps her own soul. So while Death herself literally is death, I'd be remiss if I didn't go into some other characters that serve a Grim Reaper-like role in DC Comics. So let's move on to the entity that most resembles the traditional depiction, Nekron. This guy is the Lord of the Unliving, and he presides over the Land of Unliving, which I guess makes sense. Anyway, it's a place sort of in between heaven and hell that may or may not actually be limbo. Honestly, the limbo concept was never quite dived into regarding the current map of the DC multiverse. Anyway, according to writer Geoff Johns, Nekron is the first evil that the Guardians of the Universe ever faced, and was the reason they decided to protect the universe in the first place, which eventually led to the creation of the Green Lantern Corps. And looking really different than its modern interpretation. More notably though is that he is the creator and the leader of the Black Lantern Corps and is the main antagonist of the awesome Blackest Night event. Black Lanterns are powered by the darkness that surrounds the emotional spectrum, and where ring slingers like the Green and Red Lanterns use willpower and anger to fuel their rings respectively, the Black Lanterns literally use death. Now, Nekron doesn't have a traditional power ring, but in the same interview with Geoff Johns mentioned earlier, he confirmed the lantern built into his scythe is in fact a power battery. I absolutely adore how Nekron was brought back into the spotlight with Blackest Night, especially since he was a pretty obscure character prior, kind of like the Black Racer. It's safe to say that many comic fans are familiar with the New Gods, or at the very least, Darkseid. Yet, for these titanic entities that exist outside of the traditional three-dimensional concept of the multiverse, who takes their souls? Well, that would be the Black Racer. Controlled by the Source, a metaphysical manifestation of the blank paper that comics are drawn on, the Black Racer isn't a single entity, but rather a job, title, and power set that is passed along, the most famous of which being a human named Willie Walker, a veteran who was paralyzed during the Vietnam War. Black Racer gets around on a pair of cosmic skis, which is absolutely delightful. I mean, his creator Jack Kirby already made a dude that gets around on a cosmic surfboard, so skis are a pretty natural fit. Black Racer was killed in the Death of the New Gods miniseries, but was brought back a year later for the Final Crisis event, where Barry Allen managed to have the Black Racer chase him and sort of use this cosmic entity as a bullet against Darkseid. This Black Racer design, though, was drastically different from the classic Willie Walker design prior, so it's unknown if it's the same dude or not. Post-Flashpoint, we haven't seen much of the Black Racer. Like, seriously, in his first appearance, he was on panel for like 2 pages before the Anti-Monitor fused him with the Flash. I wish there was more to talk about, but there really isn't. Now, there's one elephant in the room that I've been avoiding until I mentioned all 3 of these characters. In Captain Atom number 41 in 1990, the Cap encounters all 3 of these entities, and it is mentioned that they are aspects of death, with Death of the Endless representing death as mercy/compassion. Death of the Endless, on the other hand, personally comments that the Black Racer represents death as an inevitability, and the Phantom Stranger, who just kind of shows up, says that Nekron represents death as a cosmic certainty, and death as the ultimate opponent. Neil Gaiman, the creator of the Endless, has been reported as saying, "I just felt it confused things. She wasn't an aspect of death. She was death." When one day Necron or the Black Racer stops existing, she'll be there to take them. If the script or lettered comic had been run by me back then, I would have noticed the continuity issues and corrected them. As it wasn't a big deal. It was a fine comic as far as it went, but it tries to shoehorn death into the DC continuity and got it wrong. So I clarified matters in Sandman 20. Greg Weisman, though, one of the writers of the Captain Atom issue, went on to defend it, saying that he tried to be intentionally vague and had Captain Atom guess Death's function and her relationship with Necron and Black Racer. Since nobody in the issue told the Captain that he guessed right, there's nothing that directly contradicts Neil Gaiman's work. However, that's kind of a load of bull, since Captain Atom only speculated about Death of the Endless. Now, that's fine and all, but it was Phantom Stranger and Death, two very powerful cosmic beings, that were the ones that confirmed the roles of Black Racer and Necron. So that's not really being intentionally vague, that's kind of making a definitive statement. All of this is kind of a null point though, since this was before the Flashpoint reboot, but it still rustles my jimmies. If you want, go ahead and leave your interpretation in the comments below, because I would love to know them. However, we've got one more harbinger of death to talk about, the Grim Reaper of the DC Comics speedsters, the Black Flash. Although there are speedsters out the wazoo and 7 have been taken by this entity, there's not actually a whole lot that we know about this thing, or even why it resembles the Flash in the first place. What we do know is that the Black Flash is an entity of the Speed Force, and as such it can only be seen by speedsters. Black Flash tends to appear slightly before a speedster's death, and corrupts time when it enters the physical dimension, causing almost everything that hasn't been connected to the Speed Force for years to slow to a stop. It's also interesting in that speedsters don't seem to die in the traditional sense. Instead of moving on to heaven, hell, or purgatory, speedsters become one with the Speed Force itself, making it a bit like Speedster Valhalla. However, Black Flash is also a point of contention when it comes to continuity. Yeah, as if one wasn't already enough for the damn video. So in the Final Crisis event, Wally West implies that Black Flash and Black Racer are the same entity, a topic that is lightly touched on again later that year in the Flash Rebirth. So is this true? Well, Black Flash was originally created by Mark Millar and Grant Morrison, and considering that the first instance of Black Flash and Black Racer being implied to be the same entity was in Final Crisis, a book written by Morrison, it seems that would pretty much be word of God. It's also worth noting that in Black Racer's first appearance, he mentions that the Black Racer is an entity that is made up of many messengers. It's very possible that Black Flash is just one of those parts. However, this is still up to debate and interpretation, so again, I'd honestly love to hear your take in the comments below. At the end of the day though, Death of the Endless is the one true death in my opinion, and at the inevitable end of the multiverse, and when the death of all things occurs, even Necron, Black Racer, and Black Flash will eventually die, and it's death that will take them. In the end, death is the last thing that will ever exist, alone for eternity. Wow, that was a really bleak way to end the video. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? In fact, with all of this talk about death, you might be interested in the video that I did on DC's version of Hell. I did a lot of research on the topic, and I think it's probably one of the most comprehensive things about it on the internet, so give that a watch. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and maybe I'll see you next time.